He woke in the ash. The sky above him was bruised with the residue of a broken night, a dim gray expanse where no stars dared remain. All around, the world was silent in the way a song ends before the echo fades. The ground beneath Arlo's paws was cold and weightless, a memory of earth rather than its presence. Everything was covered in cinders, trees stripped to their bones, stones bleached and crumbled, and the house, once warm with firelight and scent, reduced to charcoal and smoke. Arlo stood still, the wind rustling what little remained of the forest, carrying the ghosts of names he could no longer remember. Where was the boy? His legs trembled, not from fear, but from the understanding that something had gone terribly wrong. His heart, too old and loyal, searched for the rhythm of footsteps, the scrape of boots on gravel, the warmth of a hand that once rested gently on his back. But there was only silence and the wind. He had made a wish. The memory of it came not in words, but in the way his fur lifted when the stars cracked open above him, when the stone glowed with that impossible silver light. He remembered placing his paw upon it, drawn by a force older than language, older than loyalty. He had closed his eyes, and in that perfect stillness whispered to the world, "Bring him back." The boy had vanished in the fog weeks before, swallowed by the hunger of the mountains. Arlo had waited at the edge of the world, night after night, tail curled around aching limbs, eyes searching for a shadow on the ridge. But the boy did not return. And so, when the sky tore open and the stone pulsed beneath the soil, Arlo had wished. And the world had changed. Not with a thunderclap or fire from the heavens, but with stillness. An eerie halt, as if time forgot how to move. As if the stars held their breath and forgot to breathe again. Now the land was hollow. Arlo walked, each step stirring flakes of ash into the air. He moved like a ghost among ghosts, through ruins both real and remembered. Trees wept charcoal leaves. Water stood still in broken wells. Birds hung motionless in the sky, their wings arrested mid-beat, like forgotten brushstrokes. He came upon the stone again. It sat in a crater of silence, blackened now, no longer glowing. Cracks webbed its surface like veins made of shadow. Around it, the ground was scorched in a perfect circle, as if the earth had recoiled from the force of his plea. There was no sign of the boy, only the mark of the wish. Arlo lay beside the stone, not because he was tired, but because he hoped the earth might speak, that it might tell him where the stars had taken his wish, or what they had asked for in return. But the earth said nothing, and the wind whispered lies. Night came without darkness. The sky remained a low, humming gray. No moon, no stars, no time. Arlo waited, and in the silence, something moved. Not in the trees, nor in the underbrush, but inside the lightless sky. A shimmer, a ripple, a shape neither near nor far. He felt it more than saw it, something watching, vast and ancient, wearing the sky like a mask. It was not cruel, not merciful, only aware. Arlo lowered his head. He had broken something, bent the order, and in return, the world had unraveled, just slightly, just enough for everything familiar to slip out between the seams. The boy was gone. The house was ash. And he, a dog once bound by loyalty, had become something else entirely. The road was not a road. It had once been a path through the hills, trampled by boots and hooves, softened by the wheels of carts and the passing of seasons. Now it was nothing more than a silver thread beneath the ash, a faint line where the land still remembered being touched. Arlo followed it because there was nowhere else to go. The sky remained unmoving, a dull and endless dawn, neither waking nor sleeping, a sky that had forgotten its colors. As Arlo moved through this hush of a world, the wind began to thicken. It carried with it something old and strange, not a scent, but the absence of scent, like a forgotten breath. The trees here stood unnaturally still, and their bark seemed etched with symbols too faint to read, as if someone had tried to carve time into their skin but had run out of it. Then, in the distance, he saw it. Rooftops. A village. It was nestled in a valley wrapped in low-lying fog, the buildings crooked and sleeping, their chimneys hollow and cold. Nothing moved. Not a bird, not a cat, not a leaf. And yet, there was no decay, no rot, as though the village had been paused mid-breath. Arlo stepped into its silence. Each house had a door that was slightly ajar, a window half open, a candle never fully burned. It was as though life had once existed here, in meals half eaten, in blankets still warm, in footsteps left in the mud, and then vanished in an instant, not from fear, but from forgetfulness. He walked through the center of the village where a clock tower rose into the still sky. Its hands pointed straight up, locked at midnight. Or perhaps noon. No one could tell. Beneath it, a well stood dry. Around it, benches where no one sat. And across them all, the stillness clung like cobweb. Then he heard it. Not a sound exactly. Not something with shape or volume. It was more like the echo of an action not yet taken. A laugh that hadn't left a mouth. A footstep that hadn't touched the ground. Arlo turned his head and looked toward the inn. There, on the porch, sat a fox. Its fur shimmered like wet leaves in moonlight, and its eyes were wrong. Not cruel. Not kind. Just aware. Like the thing in the sky. It did not speak. It simply watched. And Arlo understood. The fox was not from here. It was not of this village, nor of this world anymore. It, too, had touched something forbidden. The two creatures regarded each other in the pale light, still as statues carved from dream. Then, slowly, the fox turned its head to the north, toward the mountains, toward whatever still pulsed behind the silence, toward the center of the wound. Then it vanished, not with haste, not with noise. It simply was no longer there. Arlo stood alone, but he now knew the truth. He was not the only one left. Others had touched the thread. Others had made wishes, broken time, or wandered too far into the veil. Some, like the fox, had changed and remembered. Others, like the villagers, had changed and forgotten. He explored the rest of the village. Inside one house, he found a table still set for breakfast. Dust lay on the bread. The tea in the cup had long gone dry. A coat hung by the door, waiting. In the corner, a child's toy, a wooden horse with painted eyes that seemed to follow him. In another house, a journal, pages filled with the same sentence, repeated endlessly in a shaking hand. Today is today is today is today is. Then, nothing. He turned away. There was no death here. Only repetition. Only memory stretched so thin it no longer held meaning. The villagers were not gone. They were trapped, loops inside loops, whispers inside echoes, held in place by something that refused to let time breathe. And at the heart of it was the wish. His wish. The stone had answered not by bringing the boy back, but by folding the world inward, locking it in the moment of longing, freezing every heartbeat in its last intention. In trying to reverse loss, Arlo had unraveled motion itself. He walked back to the well and stared into its dry mouth. Beneath the stone walls, he saw not water, but stars. Still and watching. Reflections of something that was no longer in the sky. A window? A warning? Or just the eye of the thing he had summoned? He lay down beside the well and closed his eyes, though there was no sleep. Sleep required night, and night no longer came. Still, he rested, listening to the frozen hum of the stillborn day. And in his rest, he dreamed. But the dream was not his. He stood in a forest of mirrors, each one showing a version of himself. Some younger, some older, some wild, with teeth bared and fur matted in blood. Some gentle, limping beside children with glowing eyes. In each, he made a different choice. In each, the world either healed or burned. He awoke with the taste of snow on his tongue, and the fox was beside him again, this time closer. Its eyes no longer distant. It nudged him with its nose, then turned again to the north. There was no map, no guide, no stars. But Arlo knew now. The village had forgotten time. But time had not forgotten him. It was waiting in the mountains. And it was hungry. The mountain did not rise, it loomed. It was not part of the world, but something pressed into it from elsewhere, like a bruise on the sky. The wind that howled down its slopes carried whispers not meant for ears, but for memory, twisted, broken things that curled around Arlo's spine and made his breath come shorter. He climbed without knowing the path. There was none, only the pull. The fox moved ahead of him, silent, a flicker between stones and shadow, never straying too far. Its presence was not comforting, but constant, like guilt or destiny. As they climbed, the earth began to change. Grass gave way to glassy shards of stone, sharp as thought. Trees turned thin and pale, their branches reaching out like fingers. And the sky, once frozen in gray, began to shimmer, not with light, but with distortion. As though the world were a reflection on water, and someone had just stirred it with a fingertip. Then, they found the first shard. It was embedded in the side of a cliff, half buried in moss and frost. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat in stone. Arlo approached it slowly, his body tensing with each step. The closer he came, the louder the silence grew, until it was a scream without sound. The fox stayed back. Arlo touched the shard with his paw, and the world remembered. A flash, a moment, not seen but felt. The boy, laughing in the rain. A fire burning. The taste of warm bread. Then, a shadow falling. A scream swallowed by fog. The wish. And then nothing. When he opened his eyes, the shard no longer pulsed. It was cold, dim, but the memory it gave remained, like ash in the lungs. The fox turned and continued upward. There were more shards. 5 in total, or so Arlo knew, not by fact, but by instinct. Like how a bird knows where south is. Each shard was a piece of the stone he had touched when he made his wish. Each was a fragment of the tear in the sky, now embedded in the earth like splinters in skin. They had to find them all. But the second shard was not alone. It lay at the bottom of a ravine, cracked into the heart of a dried riverbed. The trees there grew inward, bent like old men guarding a grave. And among them, something waited. It had no shape, not truly. A tremble in the air. A fold in space. A wrongness that moved when Arlo did, stopped when he froze. It did not breathe. It did not blink. But it watched. When he stepped toward the shard, it stirred. Not toward him, but around him. As if circling. As if sniffing for the remains of the wish that still clung to his fur. The fox bared its teeth, a soundless snarl. Arlo lunged for the shard. The world broke open. Not in noise, but in feeling. Gravity bent. The sky darkened though it was not night. The creature, if it was a creature, surged toward him, dragging behind it a trail of nothingness, like a hole in reality. Its edges shimmered with memories not his own. A woman crying. A field burning. A door closing forever. Arlo grabbed the shard in his mouth and turned. The fox ran. And so did he. The forest did not help them. The trees seemed to shift when they were not looking, branches twisting to block their way. Shadows lengthened too quickly. Rocks cracked underfoot with no sound. The chase was not loud, it was suffocating. Like being hunted by silence itself. Then, a clearing. They burst into it together, fox and dog. And as they crossed the boundary, the thing behind them halted. It could not follow. The air inside the clearing shimmered with the same energy as the shard. Protective, perhaps. Or sacred. Arlo dropped the shard onto the frost-hardened ground. It flickered once. Then dimmed. He collapsed beside it. The fox sat near him, chest rising and falling. Its eyes no longer glowed. It looked almost tired. Above them, the sky pulsed. For the first time since the wish, something moved overhead. A crack, so faint, split the clouds. Not light. Not darkness. Just a hairline fracture in the stillness. A sign. The world was bleeding. And the shards were keys, not to fixing it, but to understanding what had truly been broken. Arlo closed his eyes. 2 shards down. 3 to go. But the darkness was learning. It no longer waited for him to call. Now it hunted. The wind stopped. Not faded. Not fell quiet. It ceased, as though some unseen mouth closed tightly on the breath of the world. Arlo stood at the rim of a valley that shimmered without motion. The trees here had no roots. They hovered inches above the ground, their leaves suspended in mid-fall, frozen like tears that had forgotten why they were shed. He had crossed into the place between. The fox had vanished hours ago, or days, or no time at all. Time, here, was not a river, but a shattered mirror. Each step Arlo took was a step across a fragment of what might have been. He felt them before he saw them. Reflections. Echoes. Not ghosts, not memories. Versions. The first stood by the edge of a still lake, its surface smooth as obsidian. A younger Arlo, his coat untouched by ash, his eyes wide and golden. He barked into the silence, eager and naive, and the silence swallowed him whole. Another walked nearby, slower, limping, his fur matted with blood, muzzle scarred. He passed through trees like a hunted thing. His eyes no longer sought anyone. They only watched behind him. And then another, monstrous, larger than life, eyes glowing with ancient fire, ribs visible through taut skin. He moved like a god who had forgotten kindness. Arlo watched them without fear. These were the roads he could have taken, paths shaped not by paw, but by choice, by sorrow, by the weight of the wish that cracked the sky. They did not see him. They were not visions for him. They were truths left untended. He moved deeper into the fracture. The land bent. The sky folded down like a curtain, and the stars rearranged themselves into spirals, constellations made of memory. Each blink brought a new world. A door closing. A fire burning. A name whispered once and never again. Then came the mirror. It stood in the center of a clearing, tall, arched, and pulsing faintly with light from within. Not glass, but water held vertically, impossibly still. And in it, himself. But not as he was. He was older, worn thin, not from time, but from weight. His eyes held no color. His paws bled where they touched the ground, and a trail of ash followed his every step. Around his neck, a collar woven from strands of starlight, broken in the center. He looked through the mirror, and then he stepped through. The world shattered. Not violently, but intimately. A quiet, internal unweaving. Like breath held too long finally exhaled. Arlo stood face to face with himself. Not a reflection, not a shadow, but a version that had never made the wish. A version that had watched the boy vanish and done nothing. Who had waited at the mountain's edge until the snow covered the grave. Who had never touched the stone, never broken the sky. He was at peace. Empty, but whole. Around them, the forest began to fold in. Branches formed spirals. Stars blinked like closing eyes. Time leaned in, listening. The truth settled like fog between them. Wishing was never the wound. Wishing was the refusal to let go. And now, to heal the world, Arlo had to do what none of his selves could do. Not fight, not chase, but release. He turned from the mirror. He let the reflection remain. And the mirror cracked. Not with violence, not with sound, just a gentle parting, a petal in the wind. The other Arlo faded into stars, drifting upward. And in that moment, Arlo understood. The world was not asking for his sacrifice. It was asking for his permission. To forget, to fall forward, to begin again. He lay down at the center of the clearing. The mirror, now shattered, dissolved into mist. The versions of himself disappeared like mist and light. The trees lowered their roots into the soil again. He had not healed the world, but he had unbound it. Dawn never came. Not as light, not as warmth. But something had shifted. The silence no longer pressed. The air no longer hummed with weight. And the sky, for the first time in forever, blinked. A single star shone. Faint. Fragile. But there. Arlo stood at the edge of the world. Behind him lay the village that forgot, the forests that bent, the reflections of what might have been. Before him, the final path, a ridge of stone lit by that one trembling light above. He had gathered 4 shards. Each one a memory, a lesson, a wound. The 5th waited in the cradle of the mountain. He walked alone now. The fox had not returned. Perhaps it had never truly existed. Perhaps it was merely his own conscience given form. Perhaps it had reached the end of its own path. The climb was slow, not because the path was steep, but because it felt like walking through memory, thick, echoing, weightless. Every step stirred things not seen. The boy's laughter, the scent of firewood, the feel of breath beneath a sleeping hand. The world replayed itself as he rose, not in sound, but in the aching quiet between heartbeats. The final shard lay atop a flat stone altar. It pulsed not with light, but with stillness. The moment Arlo touched it, the stars returned. Not gradually, not gently, but all at once, like the sky had been holding its breath for centuries. Light poured down, not blinding, but clear. The mountainside, the stone beneath him warmed. And then he saw it. A shape in the sky. Vast. Vast beyond comprehension. Not beast. Not God. Something between. Something around. The echo of the wish, the thing that had answered, the force that had bent the world in his name. It lowered itself not in motion, but in presence. It did not ask. It waited. Arlo stepped onto the altar. He stood in the middle of the 5 shards, now glowing faintly, like coals not yet gone cold. He felt the weight of his choice press against his ribs, not painful, but firm. Final. To wish again would be to repeat. To hold on would be to doom the world to silence. And so he let go. Not of the boy, for that was love, but of the need to undo loss. The wish was not evil. It was simply unfinished. A thread pulled too hard. Now he let it fall. The shards flared, not with light, but with sound, a soft exhale, like a lullaby finally remembered. They lifted into the sky, one by one, and became stars. The creature above him dissolved. Not destroyed, only freed. The wound closed. The sky darkened, properly now. Blue turned to silver. Silver to black. Stars flickered back into place like birds returning to roost. And the first true dawn broke. Sunlight crept over the ridges. Grass turned green again. Trees rooted themselves deeper. Rivers began to whisper once more. Somewhere, in a house made of ash, a new fire kindled. Arlo lay on the altar, not dying, but ending. His body softened, not in decay, but in light. Fur giving way to mist, eyes to stars, paws to breeze. He did not vanish. He became the wish fulfilled, the one that asked for nothing, only peace. And far below, in a meadow touched by morning, a puppy blinked into the world. It bore no memory of stars, no weight of silence, only light, and a name waiting to be found. The world began again.